I was standing on the sidewalk, a cardboard box in my arms, when my daughter slammed the door so hard the sound bounced through the entire building. There was no last embrace, no goodbye, just the sharp crack of wood against frame, and the echo of her voice still buried in my chest. "I don't want you here, Mom. Not anymore." I was 68 years old, and for the first time in my life, I had nowhere to go. The sky above me was that pale gray color that comes before rain, the kind that makes everything feel heavier. I stood there for a moment, staring at that closed door, half expecting it to open again, half expecting my daughter to appear with tears in her eyes, saying she didn't mean it, that she was just stressed, that I could stay, but the door remained closed. The lock clicked from the inside, a small sound, but one that echoed like a gunshot in my chest. I adjusted the box under my arm and started walking. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stand there anymore. I never thought it would end like this. When my husband died 4 years ago, he left a small property in my name, an old house on the outskirts. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. I lived there quietly, tending a small garden, keeping his memory alive in the rooms we'd shared for 40 years. The house smelled like him, like coffee and old books and the lavender soap he always used. I'd wake up some mornings and forget he was gone, reaching across the bed for him before reality settled back in. Then Claire called, my daughter. She said she needed help. Her husband had lost his job. The baby was coming. They were drowning in debt. Her voice on the phone was tight, strained, the way it used to get when she was a teenager trying not to cry. She asked if I could sell the house and move in with them. "Just temporarily, Mom, until we get back on our feet." I said yes without hesitation. What else would a mother do? I sold everything. The house, the furniture, the few pieces of jewelry my husband had given me over the years. I kept one thing, a small wooden box he'd left locked in his desk drawer. I never opened it. It felt sacred somehow, like the last piece of him I couldn't bear to disturb. The sale brought in a decent amount, enough to help Claire with her debts and still have something left over. I gave her almost all of it, $60,000. I watched her face when I handed her the check, waiting for gratitude, for relief, for love. She nodded once and said, "This should help." That was it. I moved into their small apartment with hope in my heart, believing I could be useful, believing I was wanted. I imagined helping with the baby, cooking meals, being the grandmother I'd always dreamed of being. I pictured Claire and me laughing in the kitchen the way we used to when she was small, before life got complicated, before I became someone she merely tolerated. I was wrong. From the first day, Claire treated me like a burden. She barely looked at me. When I offered to cook, she said my food was too bland, too old-fashioned. When I tried to help with the baby, she snatched him from my arms. "You'll drop him," she muttered, her eyes avoiding mine. "Your hands shake." They didn't shake. Not then. Her husband, George, was worse. A man with a sneer permanently etched on his face. He was tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of man who took up space deliberately, who made you feel small without saying a word. He made comments about how much space I took up, how I ate their food, how I was draining them. "Your mother's like a leech," I heard him tell Claire one night when they thought I was asleep. "Just hanging on, sucking us dry." Claire didn't defend me. I tried to make myself smaller. I cleaned. I cooked when they were out. I stayed quiet. I slept on a thin mattress in the corner of the living room, folding it up each morning so they wouldn't have to see it. I woke before dawn to use the bathroom so I wouldn't inconvenience them. I learned to move through their apartment like a ghost, present, but invisible. 3 months passed like that, the longest 3 months of my life. Then one morning, Claire stood over me with her arms crossed. I was still on the mattress, having just woken up. The morning light was harsh through the window, making her face look angular and cold. "We need to talk," she said. Her voice was flat, practiced, like she'd rehearsed this. I sat up slowly, my back aching from the thin mattress. "What is it? This isn't working, Mom. You need to leave." The words hung in the air between us. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline, the softening, the just kidding that never came. Leave? But where would I go? I don't know. A shelter, a senior home, anywhere. She still wouldn't meet my eyes. "You're making things harder for us. George can't relax in his own home. I can't do this anymore." I felt something crack inside me, like ice breaking on a frozen lake. Claire, I sold everything to help you. I gave you, and we're grateful." She cut me off, her voice rising slightly. "But that doesn't mean you get to stay here forever. We never said this was permanent. Forever. I'd been there 3 months. I have nowhere to go," I said quietly. "I gave up my home. I have nothing. That's not my fault." Her jaw was tight. "You made that choice." I looked at her then, really looked at her. I searched her face for some trace of the little girl who used to climb into my lap when she was scared, who used to hold my hand crossing the street, who used to tell me I was the best mom in the world. But that little girl was gone. The woman standing over me was a stranger wearing my daughter's face. "Please," I whispered. The word felt like glass in my throat. "Just give me a few days to figure something out." She shook her head. "George wants you gone today." Today? Today? The next morning, they gave me 1 more night at least. Claire handed me a garbage bag with my clothes inside and pointed at the door. I wanted to beg. I wanted to fall to my knees and plead with her to see me, to remember that I was her mother, that I had sacrificed everything for her. I wanted to remind her of every scraped knee I'd bandaged, every nightmare I'd chased away, every dollar I'd saved so she could have what she needed. But the look on her face stopped me. It was the look you give a stranger, maybe worse, a stranger you resent. So I left. George stood in the doorway as I gathered my things, his arms crossed, a satisfied smirk on his face. "About time," he muttered. Claire stood behind him, her face turned away. The baby was crying in the other room. Neither of them moved to comfort him. I walked down the stairs of their building, each step feeling like it took all my strength. The cardboard box under one arm, the garbage bag in my other hand. At the bottom, I turned back. Claire was watching from the window. For a second, our eyes met. Then she pulled the curtain closed. I walked for hours, dragging that bag behind me, the cardboard box tucked under one arm. My feet ached in my worn shoes. The sun beat down on my neck, then disappeared behind clouds that threatened rain. I had $23 in my wallet and no plan. Every face that passed me on the street looked through me, not at me. I had become what I feared most, invisible. I sat on a bench in a small park, watching pigeons peck at crumbs someone had scattered on the ground. An old man slept on another bench nearby, his belongings in shopping carts around him. A young woman pushed a stroller past, talking on her phone, laughing. The world kept turning. People kept living. And I sat there, feeling like I'd simply ceased to exist. That's when I remembered the box. My husband's box. The one I'd carried with me but never opened. I set it on my lap, my hands trembling slightly. The wood was smooth, worn at the edges from age. There was a small brass lock on the front, and attached to it with a piece of string was a tiny key. I opened it there on the bench, my breath catching in my throat. Inside was a single envelope, yellowed with age, and my husband's handwriting on the front. "For Rose, when you need it most." I tore it open with shaking fingers. Inside was a letter and a bank slip. The letter was in Robert's careful script, each word formed with the precision he brought to everything. "My dearest Rose," it read, "I never told you about this because I didn't want you to worry about money or feel tied down by it. I saved everything I could over the years, invested carefully, and put it away for the day when you might need freedom more than anything else. There's $10 million in the account listed below. It's yours. Use it wisely. Use it to live. Use it to be the woman I always knew you were. The one who sees people, who helps people, who makes the world softer. I love you always. I'll be watching over you. Robert." I read it 3 times. My hands shook so hard the paper rustled like leaves in wind. $10 million. I'd been sleeping on a mattress on my daughter's floor. I'd been eating their leftovers and feeling grateful for scraps. And all along, I'd been carrying $10 million in a box under my arm. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I just sat there, staring at the numbers on that bank slip, feeling something strange rise up in my chest. Not relief, not joy, but a kind of fierce, burning clarity. Robert had given me freedom. He'd given me a choice. And in that moment, sitting on that bench with everything I owned in a garbage bag, I knew exactly what I was going to do. The bank was 6 blocks away. I walked there slowly, the box clutched against my chest like a treasure. My reflection in shop windows showed an old woman in worn clothes, her gray hair pulled back in a simple bun, her face lined with exhaustion. I looked like someone who had nothing, and in a way, I was. but I was also someone who now had everything. Inside, the bank was cold and sterile, smelling faintly of paper and air conditioning. The floors were polished marble that clicked under my feet. I approached the counter, and a young teller looked up at me with barely concealed impatience. She was maybe 25, with perfect makeup and manicured nails that clicked on her keyboard. Her eyes swept over me once, taking in the garbage bag, the cardboard box, my worn shoes, and I watched her face shift from professional pleasantness to subtle disdain. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone suggesting she hoped the answer was no. I set the box on the counter carefully and pulled out the bank slip. My hands were steady now. "I'd like to access this account, please." She glanced at the paper, then at me, then back at the paper. I watched her face change. Confusion, then disbelief, then something like alarm. She blinked several times, as if the numbers might rearrange themselves into something that made more sense. I need to get my manager," she stammered. She disappeared into a back office, and I stood there at the counter, aware of other customers glancing at me. An older man in a business suit looked me up and down with undisguised skepticism. A woman with her teenage daughter whispered something, and they both looked away quickly when I met their eyes. A moment later, a manager appeared, a middle-aged man in a pressed suit, his smile tight and professional. His name tag read, David Morrison. He approached cautiously, the way you might approach something unexpected and potentially problematic. "Ma'am," he said quietly, leaning across the counter, "this is quite a significant account. We'll need to verify your identity and—" "I understand," I said. My voice was steady, calm. "I have my ID, and I have time." He led me to a private office, away from the curious stares. The room was small, with a desk, 2 chairs, and a window that looked out onto the street. He offered me coffee. I accepted. It was the first thing anyone had offered me with genuine courtesy in 3 months. The process took over an hour. Questions, documents, phone calls to verify the account's authenticity. Mr. Morrison's demeanor shifted gradually as each verification came back positive. The skepticism faded. The professional distance softened into something almost like respect. Through the glass wall of the office, I could see other bank employees looking in. The young teller who'd first helped me looked pale, her hand over her mouth. I wondered if she was worrying about her job. I hoped not. She was young. She'd learn. Finally, Mr. Morrison sat back in his chair and smiled. A real smile this time. Warm and genuine. "Everything checks out, Mrs. Whitman. Welcome back. I apologize for the wait, but with an account of this size, we need to be absolutely certain. What can we do for you today?" I thought about Claire, about George, about the door slamming in my face, about the 3 months of sleeping on a thin mattress, making myself small, swallowing my dignity in tiny bites every single day. Then I thought about the park bench, about the pigeons, about the old man sleeping rough, about all the invisible people shuffling past with nowhere to go and no one who saw them. "I want to open a soup kitchen," I said. He blinked. "I'm sorry?" "A community kitchen," I clarified. "For people who are hungry, who have nowhere to go, people who are invisible. I want to buy a building, hire staff, equip a proper kitchen, and feed people. Good food, dignified food. Can you help me do that?" His smile widened slowly, like sunrise. "Mrs. Whitman, we can absolutely help you do that." He referred me to a real estate agent and a lawyer. We set up accounts, discussed investments, talked about sustainability and long-term funding. Mr. Morrison was enthusiastic, asking questions, offering suggestions. When I finally left the bank 3 hours later, I had a team assembled and a plan in motion. Leaving the bank, I felt lighter than I had in years. The late afternoon sun had broken through the clouds, casting long shadows on the sidewalk. I stood there for a moment, just breathing, feeling the warmth on my face. A young man passed by, maybe 19 or 20, thin and hollow-eyed, with a backpack that clearly held everything he owned. Our eyes met briefly. I saw recognition there, the kind that passes between people who understand what it means to have nothing. I smiled at him. He looked startled, then nodded once before walking on. I watched him go and thought, soon I'll have a place where you can come, where you'll be seen. The search for a property took 2 weeks. The real estate agent, an energetic woman named Patricia, showed me dozens of spaces. Too small, too run down, wrong neighborhood, Too expensive to renovate. I was beginning to lose hope when she pulled up in front of an old restaurant space in a working-class neighborhood. "This one just came on the market," she said. "It's been closed for 18 months. The owner died, and the family's been trying to sell it." The building was red brick, 2 stories, with big windows across the front that were covered in brown paper. The paint on the door frame was peeling. A faded sign above the entrance read, "Tony's Place." But Patricia was right. It had good bones. Inside, the space opened up beautifully. A large kitchen in the back, commercial-grade equipment that would need updating but was salvageable. A dining area that could seat 60, maybe more if we arranged the tables right. Big windows that would let in afternoon light. High ceilings with exposed beams. And upstairs, a small apartment that could serve as an office or storage. I walked through slowly, my footsteps echoing on the old tile floors. I could see it. See what it could become. See the tables filled with people, the kitchen bustling with activity, the windows clean and letting in light. See dignity restored, one meal at a time. "I'll take it," I said. Patricia blinked. "Don't you want to think about it? Have an inspection?" "Yes to the inspection, but I'll take it. How soon can we close?" We closed in 10 days. I paid cash. The look on the seller's face when we signed the papers was something I'll never forget. Relief and gratitude, and a kind of wonder that someone cared enough about this old building to bring it back to life. The renovations took a month. I hired contractors who did good work, painters who took pride in their craft. We gutted the kitchen and rebuilt it to health department specifications. New ovens, new refrigerators, new everything. We refinished the floors, painted the walls a warm cream color, replaced the windows. I bought tables and chairs, sturdy ones, not fancy but comfortable. Real silverware, not plastic. Cloth napkins. Small vases for each table where we could put fresh flowers. Because dignity matters. Because the way we treat people matters. Because someone eating a meal shouldn't have to feel ashamed of needing it. I interviewed cooks, people who understood that food was more than sustenance, that it was comfort and memory and hope. I hired Maria, a grandmother from Guatemala who made the most incredible soups I'd ever tasted, and James, a culinary school graduate who'd fallen on hard times and was working 2 minimum-wage jobs to get by. He cried when I offered him a real salary and benefits. "Why me?" he asked. "You could hire anyone. Because you understand what it means to struggle," I said. "And because you'll cook for these people the way you'd cook for your own family." And I met Raymond. Raymond managed the small motel where I'd been staying while the kitchen was under construction. It was a cheap place, clean enough but worn, the kind of motel where people stayed when they had nowhere else to go. He was in his 50s, with silver hair that he wore pulled back in a ponytail, and kind eyes that crinkled when he smiled. He'd watched me come and go each day with curiosity, always greeting me politely, sometimes asking how the work was progressing. One evening, as I was returning from another long day at the construction site, he knocked on my door. I opened it to find him standing there with 2 cups of coffee and an uncertain expression. "I hope this isn't intrusive," he said. "But I heard what you're doing. The kitchen. I think it's beautiful." I invited him in. We sat in the 2 chairs by the window and talked for hours. He told me about his own life, how he'd been homeless for 3 years after a divorce left him broken, how he'd lost his job as a teacher, lost his apartment, lost everything, how he'd lived in his car, then under bridges, then in shelters. "There was this community kitchen," he said, staring into his coffee cup. "St. Mary's downtown. I went there every day for 2 years. It wasn't just the food, though. The food was good. It was the way they looked at me, like I was a person, like I mattered. The volunteer there, this old woman named Betty, she learned my name. She'd ask me how I was doing. She'd save me an extra roll because she knew I liked them." His voice broke slightly. "She saved my life. She made me believe I was worth saving. And eventually, I saved myself." "How did you get back on your feet?" I asked. "Slowly. Betty connected me with social services. I got into transitional housing, found this job at the motel. It's not much, but it's honest work, and I have a roof over my head. And now I try to be for others what Betty was for me." He looked up at me then, his eyes bright. "If you need help," he said, "I'd like to volunteer. I know this neighborhood. I know the people. I know what they need." He became my right hand. Raymond knew the neighborhood, knew which street corners people gathered on, which alleys served as makeshift camps, which abandoned buildings housed those with nowhere else to go. He spread the word quietly, carefully, making sure everyone knew they'd be welcome. No questions asked, no judgment, no requirement to listen to a sermon or fill out forms or prove they were deserving. Everyone deserves food, Raymond said simply. That's the only requirement. Being human. We opened on a Tuesday in October. I stood at the door at 6 a.m, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The sun was just coming up, casting golden light across the street. Raymond stood beside me, and Maria and James were in the kitchen preparing breakfast. The smell of fresh coffee and baking bread drifted through the air. "What if no one comes?" I whispered to Raymond. He smiled. "They'll come." By 7, there was a line stretching around the block. They came in slowly at first, cautious and wary. An elderly man with a cane, his clothes patched but clean. A young mother with 2 small children clinging to her legs. A veteran with haunted eyes and a carefully controlled expression. A teenager with a bruised face who wouldn't make eye contact. I greeted each one personally at the door, shook their hands, learned their names. "Welcome," I said to each one. "I'm Rose. I'm so glad you're here." Some looked startled. Some mumbled thanks. Some said nothing at all, just shuffled past quickly, as if afraid I'd change my mind and turn them away. We served breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast with real butter, fresh fruit, crispy bacon, coffee and orange juice. Simple food, but made with care. Maria had made her special potato soup, rich and creamy and seasoned perfectly. James had baked rolls that morning, and they came out of the oven golden and fragrant. I watched their faces as they ate, watched the way tension melted from their shoulders, the way they sat a little straighter, the way some of them closed their eyes after the first bite, savoring it, the way the young mother cut up food for her children, smiling at them encouragingly even though I could see the exhaustion in every line of her face. An old man approached me after he'd finished eating. His hands shook as he held his cap. "Thank you, ma'am," he said quietly. "I haven't had a meal like that in, I can't remember how long." "You're welcome here every day," I told him. "What's your name?" "Henry." "It's nice to meet you, Henry. I hope you'll come back." He nodded, his eyes wet. "I will." By the end of the first day, we'd served 96 people. I lay in bed that night in my small motel room, every muscle aching, and I couldn't stop smiling. Robert's voice echoed in my mind. "Use it to be the woman I always knew you were." I'm trying, I thought. I'm trying. By the end of the first week, we were serving over 100 people a day. Word spread fast. Raymond had been right. People talked to each other, looked out for each other. The community of the invisible was bigger and more connected than I'd imagined. But not everyone was happy. Martha Cunningham lived 3 blocks away in a pristine Victorian house with a manicured lawn and a garden that won neighborhood awards. She was the president of the local residents association, a position she took very seriously. I'd heard about her before I met her. Patricia, the real estate agent, had mentioned her during our closing. "Just be prepared," Patricia had warned. Martha has opinions about everything, especially about what does and doesn't belong in her neighborhood. She appeared at my door 2 weeks after we opened, flanked by 2 other women I didn't recognize. She was in her 60s, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, her gray hair styled perfectly. Her face was pinched with disapproval. "Mrs. Whitman," she said, not offering her hand. "I'm Martha Cunningham. We need to discuss this establishment of yours." I stepped aside. "Please, come in." They entered like a delegation, looking around with barely disguised distaste. Martha's eyes swept over the dining area, where a few late breakfast stragglers were still eating. Her lip curled slightly. "Coffee?" I offered. "No, thank you. This won't take long." She clasped her hands in front of her. "Mrs. Whitman, I'm sure your intentions are good, but this soup kitchen is attracting the wrong element to our neighborhood. Property values are going to plummet. We have children in this neighborhood, families. We can't have vagrants wandering our streets." I felt anger flash through me, hot and sudden, but I kept my voice calm. "The people who come here are human beings, Mrs. Cunningham. They're hungry, they're struggling, they deserve to eat. They're vagrants," she said flatly. "Addicts, criminals. You're enabling them. You're making it easier for them to avoid taking responsibility for their lives. I'm feeding them. You're attracting them. Her voice rose slightly. Before you opened, we didn't have this problem. Now there are people sleeping in doorways, panhandling on corners, using drugs in our parks. You've turned this neighborhood into a haven for the homeless. Or, I said quietly, I've revealed that they were always here, and now they have somewhere to go where they're treated with dignity. Her eyes narrowed. We'll see about that. She launched a campaign against us. Complaints to the city about parking, about noise, about health code violations that didn't exist. She filed petitions. She organized protests, standing outside with signs that read, "Not in our neighborhood," and "Protect our children," and "No free rides." A dozen people joined her at first, then more. They'd stand there for hours, shouting at people trying to enter the kitchen, shaming them for being hungry. I watched from inside, my heart breaking. Some people turned away, too ashamed to push past the protesters. Others walked through with their heads down, faces burning with humiliation. Raymond was furious. "We should call the police," he said. "This is harassment." "No," I said. "They have a right to protest. We just have to show them they're wrong." The local news picked it up. Suddenly, we were controversial. A reporter came to interview me, asking pointed questions about whether I was enabling dependence and attracting crime. I answered honestly. "I'm feeding hungry people," I said to the camera. "If that's controversial, then I don't understand the world anymore." The segment aired that evening. I watched it in my motel room, my stomach in knots, expecting the worst. But something unexpected happened. The comments section online exploded, and most of them were supportive. People shared the video. Local restaurants reached out offering to donate food. Churches called wanting to send volunteer groups. High school students organized food drives. And the people we fed? They defended us fiercely. Henry, the old man who'd been one of our first guests, wrote a letter to the newspaper. It was published 3 days later. I still have it, framed on the wall of my office. "I am 74 years old," it read. "I worked for 40 years as a machinist before my company closed, and I lost my pension. I lost my home. I lost my dignity. Rose's kitchen gave it back to me. The people who protest outside, calling us criminals and addicts, don't see us. They see their fears. Rose sees people. She sees me. That's all anyone wants, to be seen." More letters followed. Stories poured in. The tide began to turn. One of those stories was Ben's. Ben was 19, rail-thin, with nervous eyes and a quiet voice that barely rose above a whisper. He started coming to the kitchen about a month after we opened, always arriving exactly at 11 when the lunch service started, always sitting in the same corner table by the window, always eating alone. He'd finish his meal quickly, fold his napkin carefully, and leave without speaking to anyone. Raymond noticed him first. "That kid," Raymond said one evening as we were cleaning up. "The thin one who sits by the window. He reminds me of myself at that age. Lost, scared, trying to be invisible so the world won't hurt him more than it already has." I started paying attention to Ben after that. Started noticing the details. The way his clothes, while clean, were the same ones every day. The way his hands shook slightly when he held his fork. The way he'd glance at the door constantly, as if expecting someone to burst in and drag him away. The way he never took more than one serving, even when we encouraged seconds. I started sitting with him, just casual, unobtrusive, cleaning the table next to his, refilling the coffee station nearby, finding excuses to be close. Small conversations at first. "How's the soup today?" "Good, thank you. I'm Rose." A pause. "Ben. It's nice to meet you, Ben." Over weeks, I learned his story in small pieces. He'd been in foster care his whole life, bouncing between homes. Some were okay, some were terrible. He'd aged out of the system 6 months ago on his 18th birthday, handed a garbage bag with his belongings and a handshake from a social worker who said, "Good luck." He'd been living in his car, a 1998 Honda Civic with a broken heater and a passenger door that didn't close properly. He was working part-time at a gas station, 3rd shift, minimum wage. Every penny went toward gas, car insurance, and saving for community college tuition. He wanted to study computer science. "I'm good with computers," he told me one day, the most words he'd strung together since we'd met. "I can fix them, program them. I taught myself mostly, from library books and YouTube videos. I just need a chance." "Have you applied to school?" He nodded. Got accepted to City Community College, but I can't afford it. Even with financial aid, I'd need $3,000 for the first semester. I've saved $900 so far. What about housing? He looked down at his hands. I'll figure it out. I always figure it out. But I could see the hopelessness in his eyes, the bone-deep exhaustion of someone who'd been fighting alone for so long, he'd forgotten what it felt like to have help. What if I helped you? I said quietly. He looked up sharply. What? With school? With housing? What if I helped you? He stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. Why would you do that? Because everyone deserves a chance, Ben. And because I believe in you. I can see you're smart, hardworking, determined. You just need someone to believe in you, too. His face crumpled. He pressed his hands to his eyes, trying to hide the tears, his shoulders shaking. I reached across the table and took his hand. It was cold, calloused, the hand of someone who'd worked hard his whole young life. It's okay, I whispered. It's okay to let someone help you. I paid for his tuition, found him a small studio apartment not far from campus. Nothing fancy, but it was warm and safe in his. Made sure he had everything he needed. A computer, textbooks, food, basics. In return, I asked only one thing, that he volunteer at the kitchen when he could, and that someday, when he was able, he'd help someone else the way I'd helped him. Pay it forward, I said. That's the only payment I want. He threw his arms around me and held on like a drowning person to a life raft. I won't let you down, he whispered fiercely. I swear I won't let you down. I know you won't, Ben. I know. Ben became part of our family. He moved into his apartment and decorated it with secondhand furniture and a fierce pride that made me smile. He enrolled in classes and attacked them with the intensity of someone who knew this was his one shot. And he kept his promise. Between classes and studying, he was at the kitchen almost every day, working shifts, helping however he could. But more than that, he had a gift. He connected with people in a way the rest of us couldn't, especially the younger ones who came through our doors. Kids aging out of foster care, like he had. Teenagers who'd run away from abuse. Young adults trying to escape addiction or homelessness or violence. He'd sit with them during meals, listen to their stories without judgment, share his own experiences. He'd help them navigate social services, fill out forms, find resources. You get it, one girl told him. She was maybe 17, with haunted eyes and arms covered in scars. You don't look at me like I'm broken. You're not broken, Ben said gently. You're surviving. That takes more strength than most people will ever have to find. Raymond started calling him our angel messenger. The name stuck. Within a few months, Ben had helped 6 young people find housing. 4 had enrolled in school or job training programs. 2 had reconnected with family members they'd been estranged from. How do you do it? I asked him one day. He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that lit up his whole face. I just remember what it felt like to be alone, to think no one cared, and I make sure they know someone does. Months passed. The kitchen became more than just a place to eat. It became a community. People started arriving early, staying late, talking to each other. Connections formed. Henry, the old veteran, started a chess club that met on Tuesday afternoons. Maria taught cooking classes on Thursday evenings, showing people how to make nutritious meals on tiny budgets. James started a program where people could work in the kitchen for a few hours in exchange for gift cards to the local grocery store. Not because they had to, but because many people wanted the dignity of working for what they received. Raymond organized support groups for veterans, for people in recovery, for parents, for anyone who needed to talk. We brought in nurses to offer basic health screenings. A local barber volunteered to give free haircuts once a week. A dentist came once a month. We weren't just feeding people. We were restoring humanity. Even Martha Cunningham eventually stopped protesting. She never admitted defeat, never apologized. But one day, the protesters simply stopped showing up. I saw her once, walking past the kitchen with her perfectly groomed dog. Our eyes met. She looked away quickly and crossed to the other side of the street. Small victories. The kitchen became a fixture in the neighborhood. Local businesses started donating regularly. The high school made us their service project. The local newspaper did a follow-up story, this time positive, highlighting the lives we'd changed. But I thought about Claire sometimes. More than sometimes. Every day, really. I'd see mothers come in with their children, and I'd think of her. I'd wonder how she was doing. whether the baby was healthy, whether George was treating her well, whether she ever thought about me. I'd tried calling once, about 2 months after I opened the kitchen. She didn't answer. I left a voicemail. "Claire, it's Mom. I just wanted you to know I'm okay. I'm doing something good. I hope you're well. I love you." She never called back. I didn't try again. I told myself it was because I was respecting her boundaries. But the truth was, I was afraid. Afraid of the rejection. Afraid of hearing that cold voice again. That stranger's voice coming from my daughter's mouth. Raymond noticed, of course. He had a way of seeing things people tried to hide. "You miss her," he said one evening as we were closing up. I didn't ask who he meant. "Every day. Have you thought about reaching out again?" She made it clear she doesn't want me in her life. "People say things they don't mean when they're desperate," Raymond said gently. "When they're scared." I said terrible things to people I loved when I was at my lowest. Pushed everyone away because I thought I didn't deserve love. Sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones hurting the most themselves. I knew he was right. But knowing something and being ready to face it are different things. "Maybe someday," I said. Winter came. November slid into December, and the cold settled in hard. We increased our hours, opening earlier and staying open later. The need always grew in winter. The cold drove people indoors, made survival that much harder. We started keeping extra blankets and coats by the door, letting people take what they needed. We were serving nearly 300 people a day now. The dining room was always full, always loud with conversation, and the clatter of silverware, and the hiss of the coffee machine. Maria had hired 2 assistants to help in the kitchen. James was training volunteers in basic food prep. Raymond had started a winter shelter program in the apartment upstairs, rotating 4 beds for people who had nowhere else to go on the coldest nights. It was exhausting, beautiful work. I'd never been happier. Then one evening in mid-December, as snow began to fall outside in thick, heavy flakes that turned the street white, the door opened and someone stumbled in. It was Claire. I was refilling the coffee station, my back to the door, when I heard the sudden hush that fell over the dining room. That particular quality of silence that means something unexpected has happened. I turned, and there she was. I almost didn't recognize her. She'd lost so much weight her face looked skeletal, all sharp angles and hollow shadows. Her clothes hung on her frame, dirty and torn. Her hair, once shiny and carefully styled, was matted and greasy. She had a bruise on her cheek, dark purple fading to yellow at the edges, and she had a baby carrier strapped to her chest, and inside it, a tiny infant bundled in a thin blanket that had once been white, but was now dingy gray. She stood in the doorway, swaying slightly, her eyes scanning the room with the desperate, darting movements of a hunted animal. Then her gaze landed on me. Our eyes met. She froze. Time seemed to stop. The entire dining room was watching us, 50 people holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen. I saw recognition flash across Claire's face, followed by something I couldn't quite name. Shame, fear, hope. "Mom," she whispered. The word hung in the air between us, so soft I almost didn't hear it. Then her legs gave out. I was across the room before I knew I was moving. We caught her before she hit the floor. Raymond appeared out of nowhere, supporting her on one side while I took the other. Ben was there too, carefully removing the baby carrier, cradling it with gentle hands. "I've got him," Ben said quietly. "He's okay." We guided Claire to a chair. Her skin was cold, clammy with sweat despite the winter chill. Her hands were shaking. Up close, I could see more bruises on her arms, barely hidden by her sleeves, a cut on her lip that hadn't quite healed, the unmistakable signs of someone who'd been through hell. I knelt in front of her, taking her freezing hands in mine. "Claire, honey, what happened?" She couldn't look at me. Tears streamed down her face, silent and terrible. "I didn't know where else to go," she whispered. "I saw your name on the sign outside, and I couldn't." "It's okay," I said, my own voice breaking. "You're here now. You're safe." "I'm not," she choked out. "I'm not safe. He'll find me. He always finds me." "Who? George?" She nodded, her whole body trembling. "He got worse after you left. So much worse. The drinking, the anger. He started hitting me. Just once at first, then more. I tried to leave, but he'd find me, drag me back. Said if I left again, he'd take the baby. Said no one would believe me. Said I was worthless, that I deserved it, that..." She broke down completely. sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe. I pulled her into my arms and held her the way I used to when she was small, when nightmares woke her and only Mom could make the monsters go away. She clung to me like she was drowning. "He threw us out 3 days ago," she gasped between sobs. "Said we were bleeding him dry. Said he didn't want us anymore. We've been sleeping in the car, but it broke down yesterday, and I didn't have money to fix it. And the baby is sick, Mom. He won't stop crying, and I don't know what to do, and I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." "Shh," I whispered, rocking her gently. "It's okay. You're safe now. Both of you." Ben approached carefully, still holding the baby carrier. "Mrs. Whitman, the baby is really warm. I think he has a fever." I looked up at him, then at Raymond. "Call 911. We need to get them both to a hospital." "On it," Raymond said, already pulling out his phone. The ambulance arrived within 10 minutes. The paramedics were gentle, professional. They checked Claire first, dehydrated, malnourished, showing signs of a concussion. Then the baby. He had a severe ear infection and was dangerously dehydrated. They needed to go to the hospital immediately. "I'm coming with you," I told Claire as they loaded her onto a stretcher. She grabbed my hand, her grip weak but desperate. "Please don't leave me." "Never," I said fiercely. "I will never leave you." At the hospital, they admitted both of them. Claire needed IV fluids, antibiotics for an infection she'd been ignoring, and observation for her head injury. The baby, his name was Michael, I learned after Robert's father, needed treatment for his ear infection and monitoring for dehydration. I sat with Claire through the night. She slept fitfully, crying out sometimes, her body jerking with nightmares. I held her hand and whispered reassurances, the way I had when she was little and afraid of the dark. In the morning, when she woke, she looked at me with eyes full of anguish. "Why are you being so nice to me?" she whispered. "After what I did? I threw you out like garbage, Mom. I took your money and treated you like dirt and kicked you out onto the street. You should hate me." "Why don't you hate me?" I brushed the hair back from her forehead, my heart breaking. "Because you're my daughter," I said simply. "And because everyone makes mistakes. Everyone gets lost. What matters is finding your way back. I don't deserve your forgiveness." "Maybe not," I said gently, "but I'm giving it anyway. That's what love is, Claire. It's not about deserving. It's about choosing to love even when it's hard, even when it hurts." She started crying again, softer this time. "I was so cruel to you. You were desperate. You were scared. You were in a bad situation with a bad man who convinced you that you were worthless. I understand that now. How can you understand? How can you forgive me?" I thought about that for a long moment. "Because I remember who you were before all this. The little girl who used to make me cards on Mother's Day. The teenager who stayed up with me all night when your father was in the hospital. The young woman who called me crying the day she found out she was pregnant because she was so happy and so scared. That's my daughter. The person who hurt me, that was someone lost in pain and fear, and I choose to help you find your way back." She reached for my hand, squeezing it weakly. "I don't know how to fix this. How to fix me. One day at a time," I said, echoing the words Raymond had once said to me. That's how we all do it. One day, 1 hour, 1 moment at a time. She stayed in the hospital for 3 days. I stayed with her the entire time, sleeping in the chair beside her bed, only leaving to check on the kitchen and reassure Raymond and Ben that everything was under control. They handled everything beautifully in my absence. When Claire was discharged, I brought her and Michael to the small apartment I'd rented near the kitchen. It wasn't much, just 2 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, but it was warm and safe and clean. I'd bought new sheets, stocked the refrigerator, put fresh flowers on the table. "This is yours?" Claire asked, looking around. "This is ours," I corrected, "for as long as you need it." She broke down again, overwhelmed by the simple kindness of a safe place to sleep. I held her and let her cry it out, understanding that sometimes tears are the only way to release years of held-in pain. The first few weeks were hard. Claire was jumpy, startled by sudden noises, afraid every knock on the door was George. She had nightmares that woke her screaming. She was deeply depressed, struggling to bond with Michael, convinced she was a terrible mother. "He deserves better than me," she said one night, staring at her sleeping son with empty eyes. "He deserves you," I said firmly. "The real you, the you that's recovering, the you that's fighting. That's the you he needs." We got her into therapy, found a support group for domestic violence survivors, helped her file for divorce and a restraining order against George. Slowly, painfully, she started to heal, and she started helping at the kitchen. It began tentatively. She'd come down with Michael in a carrier just to watch it first. Then she started folding napkins, setting tables, refilling water pitchers. Small tasks, nothing overwhelming. But I watched her watching the people who came through our doors, seeing herself in their exhaustion, their shame, their desperate need for dignity. One day, about a month after she'd arrived, a young woman came in with a toddler on her hip and a black eye she'd tried to cover with makeup. She sat at a table in the corner, her movements careful, controlled, as if she was trying to take up as little space as possible, as if she was trying to disappear. Claire brought her food personally, set it down gently, and then she did something I didn't expect. She sat down across from her. "Hi," Claire said quietly. "I'm Claire." The woman looked up, startled, wary. "I see you," Claire continued, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "And I want you to know you're not alone. I was where you are, and it gets better. I promise it gets better." The woman stared at her for a long moment. Then she started crying. Claire reached across the table and took her hand, and they sat there together, two survivors recognizing each other, offering the comfort of understanding. I watched from across the room, my heart full to bursting. Raymond stood beside me, his own eyes wet. "She's going to be okay," he said. "Yes," I whispered. "She is." Claire found her purpose in helping other women like herself. She became the person people could talk to, the one who understood the special kind of hell that was domestic violence. She started a weekly support group at the kitchen. She learned about resources, shelters, legal aid. She became fierce in her advocacy, determined that no one else would suffer the way she had if she could help it. Ben took her under his wing, just as Raymond had done for me. They'd sit together during breaks, two survivors from different kinds of trauma, sharing their stories and their hope. Ben encouraged her to go back to school. Claire had been studying nursing before she met George, before he convinced her to drop out. "You'd be an amazing nurse," Ben told her. "You have the heart for it." "I don't know if I can," Claire said, doubt in her voice. "You can," he said firmly. "Look at everything you've already survived. School is nothing compared to that." She enrolled in community college that spring. Part-time, just 2 classes to start. But it was a beginning. She studied at night after Michael was asleep, bent over her textbooks with the same fierce determination she brought to everything now. I'd watch her sometimes, this daughter who had been lost and was now finding herself, and feel such overwhelming pride I could barely breathe. One afternoon, about 6 months after she'd stumbled through our doors, we were cleaning up after lunch service when she stopped and turned to me. The dining room was empty except for us, sunlight streaming through the windows, dust motes dancing in the golden light. "I need to tell you something," she said. I set down the dish I was wiping and gave her my full attention. "I found out about the money," she said quietly, "about Dad's inheritance. Ben mentioned it, not to gossip, but because he thought I should know the whole story. Mom, you had $10 million. I waited, unsure where this was going. When I kicked you out, I thought you were just a burden, someone I had to take care of because I was supposed to. I was so caught up in my own problems, so convinced that everything was about me and my suffering, that I couldn't see you. I couldn't see what you'd sacrificed for me my whole life." Her voice cracked. "And when you could have used that money for anything, a mansion, a life of luxury, revenge, you chose to feed people, to help people. You chose love over bitterness, generosity over anger." Tears streamed down her face. "You chose me, even after everything I did. You saved me when I didn't deserve saving, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of that, trying to be the kind of person you are." I pulled her into my arms, my own tears falling. "You already are," I whispered. "You're already that person, Claire. You just had to find your way back to yourself." We stood there in the empty dining room, holding each other, 2 broken people who had found their way back from the edge. And I felt Robert's presence so strongly in that moment, as if he was standing right there with us, smiling, knowing that his gift had done exactly what he'd hoped. It had given me freedom, and that freedom had given my daughter her life back. It's been a year now since that snowy December evening when Claire stumbled through our doors. The kitchen is thriving in ways I never imagined. We serve over 300 people a day. We've helped 41 people find permanent housing. 28 have found stable employment. Ben graduated with honors, top of his class, and now runs a nonprofit helping other foster youth transition to independence. He's been accepted to a master's program in social work, full scholarship. Raymond is training new volunteers, passing on everything he's learned about compassion and service and seeing people. He's become the heart of this place, the steady presence everyone relies on. Henry, our chess-playing veteran, now manages our food pantry program, making sure people can take groceries home to feed their families. Maria's cooking classes are so popular we had to add a second session. And Claire? She works beside me every day. She's in her second year of nursing school, maintaining a 4.0 GPA. She's filed for divorce. It went through last month. George signed the papers without contesting anything, probably relieved to be rid of the responsibility. She's in therapy, doing the hard work of healing from trauma. She's learned to be a mother to Michael, who is now a happy, healthy toddler who runs through the kitchen bringing smiles to everyone he encounters. She's also become the voice for survivors of domestic violence in our community. She speaks at schools, at churches, at community centers. She tells her story, the whole story, including the part about kicking me out, because she says it's important for people to understand that victims aren't perfect, that we make mistakes, that we hurt people, that we need grace and second chances. My mother gave me that, she says in her speeches. When I deserved it least, she gave me what I needed most. And that changed everything. Sometimes she still looks at me with guilt in her eyes, especially on the hard days when the memories crowd in. I tell her the same thing every time. We all fall. What matters is that we get back up, and we help each other stand. Martha Cunningham came by last week. I was in the kitchen when Raymond came to get me, his expression carefully neutral. "Someone to see you," he said. I dried my hands and walked out to find Martha standing in the dining room, looking uncomfortable but determined. She was holding an envelope. "Mrs. Whitman," she said formally, "I came to apologize." I blinked in surprise. "I was wrong," she continued, the words clearly difficult for her. "About this place, about the people you serve, about you. I let fear and prejudice guide my actions, and I'm ashamed of that." She held out the envelope. "This is a donation, for the kitchen. It's not much, but I'd like to help if you'll let me." I took the envelope. "Thank you, Martha. That means more than you know. I'd also like to volunteer," she said. "If you need help. I used to be a teacher before I retired. Perhaps I could tutor. Help people with reading or job applications." I smiled. "We'd love that." She nodded once, briskly, that settled expression on her face. But as she turned to leave, she paused. "My husband was an alcoholic," she said quietly, not looking at me. "He lost his job, and we almost lost our house. For 6 months, we lived on soup kitchen meals while he went through treatment. I never told anyone. I was so ashamed." She finally met my eyes. "I forgot what that felt like. To need help. To need grace. You reminded me. So thank you." She left before I could respond, but she came back the next week, and the week after that. Now she's here every Tuesday and Thursday, patiently helping people fill out forms, teaching adults to read, writing resumes. She's still Martha, still prickly and opinionated, but there's a softness to her now, a humility that comes from remembering our shared humanity. Yesterday, a woman came in, maybe 25, with hollow eyes and a defeated slump to her shoulders. She reminded me so much of Claire that first night. She sat alone, eating mechanically, tears streaming silently down her face. Claire noticed. She always notices. She crossed the room and sat down across from her. "Hi," I heard her say gently. "I'm Claire, and I see you." I watched them talk, watched Claire take the woman's hand, watched hope flicker in those hollow eyes, and I thought about the journey we'd all been on. Claire, me, Raymond, Ben, Henry, even Martha. All of us lost at some point. All of us found. Robert's letter said to use the money to be the woman he always knew I was. But the truth is, this place, these people, they made me into someone I didn't know I could be. Someone stronger. Someone who understands that brokenness isn't the end of the story. It's often the beginning of the most important chapter. Claire caught my eye across the room and smiled. A real smile, full of warmth and love and hope. I smiled back, my heart full. We're all just walking each other home, I thought. Every single one of us, stumbling through the dark, reaching for each other's hands. And nobody walks alone. Not anymore. If this story touched something in you, I hope you'll share it. Not for me, but for everyone out there who's stumbling right now, who's wondering if they matter, if anyone cares, if it's too late to start over. It's not too late. It's never too late. Share it for the Claires of the world, who made terrible mistakes and need to know there's a path back to redemption. Share it for the Bens, who are fighting alone and need to know someone believes in them. Share it for the Raymonds, who lost everything and rebuilt from nothing. Share it for the Marthas, who are trapped by their own fear and prejudice and need permission to soften. And maybe, if you have the chance, show up for someone today. Buy them a meal. Listen to their story. See them. Really see them. Look past the surface to the human being underneath, struggling and scared and hoping someone notices they exist. Because we all need that. Every single one of us. We need to be seen. We need to matter. We need to know we're not alone in this messy, beautiful, heartbreaking world. Subscribe if you believe in second chances. If you believe that love is stronger than bitterness, that compassion is more powerful than judgment, that the smallest act of kindness can change someone's entire trajectory. I believe it. I've lived it. I've watched it transform my daughter, my community, myself, and I'm proof. We're all proof that it's never too late to start over. Never too late to choose love. Never too late to become the person you were always meant to be. The door to Rose's kitchen is always open. There's always a seat at the table. There's always someone who will see you. And there's always hope. Always.